Hello, today we are talking about the vagus nerve. There's a lot going around right now about the vagus nerve. Oh, if you can heal the vagus nerve, strengthen the vagus nerve, sound helps the vagus nerve, bathing helps the vagus nerve, throwing cold water on it, breathing exercises, meditations, there's all kinds of different things out there. Now, if you're wondering, what the heck is the vagus nerve and what is this woman talking about? Let's start there. If you haven't heard of the vagus nerve, this is going to be a little bit of a science lesson for you. The vagus nerve is part of the autonomic nervous system, meaning automatic. You have no control over it. You can do a squat, you can contract your muscles. This is not so easy. We talked in the last episode about flight or fight or freeze. You're running from a bear, you're in flight or fight. It's a pretty common term that we use. Now, that is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, and it begins in the brain. It also begins with perception. So if you see that bear, you know, I'm going to die, I better run. Or I'm going to take it on, I'm going to fight. Or you can be like a fainting goat and, pass out and hope that it thinks you're dead. The likelihood is you're going to run. That's the most common. Flight. Just get out. Just get me out of here. When there's aggression, you're going to fight because you think, hey, I'm feeling aggressive, I'm taking this guy on. This is called your sympathetic nervous system. The fainting goat, on the other hand, is actually not part of the sympathetic nervous system. It's part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So those are your two legs underneath this autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic. So when you're in sympathetic, meaning I'm running from that bear, I am stressed out, a whole slew of things are happening. Your heart rate's going to increase, your blood pressure increases, your adrenal glands just got hit. It's going to release a message just, hey, throw some sugar out there because we got to contract every muscle we got going to get out of here. It's also going to release a little bit of dopamine temporarily. So, this is why as kids, you thrive this excitement, you're like near death and you start running and then you roll over laughing. It's because you get this huge dopamine release. And then, it's supposed to motivate you. So the body is incredible on how it figures all this stuff out is you've got to stay motivated to run. So it releases that dopamine so that you can just keep going and you don't completely give up. The freeze is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. When you go into parasympathetic, you're healing. So when you're in sympathetic or running from the bear, flight or fight, things shut down to allow you to run. Digestion shuts down. Then you've got healing shuts down. So things that, priority on healing, we're not worried about. So we as therapists and healers will help stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system to put your body into a state where it can start healing and hopefully get you out of that sympathetic nervous system. Because we are actually not meant to be in flight or fight all the time. That's a really bad place to be. It's actually why when you're under a lot of stress, right? You're like, okay, stress. It actually shuts down your immune system. So it's not that you're not getting flus and colds. It's that you're actually releasing a natural steroid, and cortisol is actually a natural steroid. And that natural steroid is going to allow your body to heal from these things, but you're unlikely to feel even some of the symptoms. But the moment you stop and now you go into parasympathetic, what can happen is that parasympathetic, which is your vagus nerve, has two legs. One leg is called the dorsal vagus, and one is called the ventral vagus. The dorsal vagus is your sleeping goat. The dorsal vagus is going to shut you down. It's going to put you to sleep. It's going to knock everything out. This is when you're feeling depressed. This is when you're like, I have no reason to get out of bed. I have no sense of purpose. I am exhausted. I have brain fog. I can't do anything. All I want to do is sleep because you are in self-preservation mode. You're in the autopilot, or you're in safe mode of your car where you're only going 20 kilometers an hour on the highway. You're not going 100 kilometers on the highway. The body goes to the opposite extreme. Now, if it comes back up, it goes into dorsal vagus, which is where balance happens. The body is happy here. You feel a little more euphoric. You feel more motivated. Your hormones are working properly. Healing is happening normally. And this is where we strive to be. but is really hard to balance. And I promised in the last episode we would take our MEPS and use it with the vagus nerve. So we're going to break this down. So if you are happy, you're balanced, you feel safe, and you feel connected, that's when you're in ventral vagus. So mental, this is your thoughts and your cognitive function. You're thinking clearly, you're creative, you're problem solving, you have a flexible mindset, you're happy. Emotionally, you're open-hearted, stable, emotionally flexible. You're able to feel and process emotions naturally and in the moment. Physical, you have strong digestion, good circulation, stable energy. You're comfortable in your body. I would like to add in here, well, what about my shoulder and back pain? Good circulation. Bad circulation means you're not healing. So if you've got chronic pain, then that's where that comes in the circulation. We'll talk about that a little later in osteopathy when we talk about how important it is getting blood to where it needs to go. Spiritual, if you're in ventral vagus, you're connected. You have a sense of meaning, a sense of flow, gratitude, a deep presence, a connection to yourself and others. So this is what we're all striving for. Those are usually what our goals are. We have goals, whether it's financial goals, we have goals if they're health goals, we have goals with relationships. All of those goals are likely going to be achieved when we're in a balanced state. When we go off to either side, when we go into our sympathetic nervous system into flight or fight, or we go into the dorsal vagal into the freeze or shut down, nothing good happens in those two systems. So let's say all of a sudden you get super stressed out. You're in flight or fight, mental, racing thoughts, overanalyzing, catastrophizing, really having a difficult time relaxing. Emotional, you're feeling overwhelmed, irritable, mood swings, you're easily triggered, you're anxious, and your energy is just like an anxious energy. Physically, you've got tight muscles, shallow breathing, gut distress, diarrhea, nausea, irritable bowel syndrome, high heart rate, and adrenaline spikes. Spiritually, there's a desperate need for control. You're rigid in your beliefs, you're seeking external validation, and you can go into a fear-driven spirituality instead of a balanced one. You're in flight or fight and say, hey, I need to get out of here. The longer you're in it, the more likely you are to go past the balanced state and right into the dorsal vagal, which is why oftentimes high stress leads you right to shutdown. So if you go into shutdown, which is on the far left, mentally, you got brain fog, lack of motivation, hard to focus, detached from thoughts. Emotionally, you're numb. You really don't feel a lot. And if you do, you feel hopeless and your mood's kind of flat. Nah, whatever. Physically, chronic fatigue, low energy, digestion shuts down. So now you go into constipation and bloating, poor circulation, and the voice becomes really weak. Spiritually, you feel disconnected from your sense of purpose. You might feel lost. You might have an existential dread or apathy. So we're trying to get into this balanced ventral vagal. Okay, so stimulating the vagus nerve, you don't want to stimulate the dorsal vagal because we don't want to shut down, but we also don't want to go into the flight or fight. Well, guess what? How do we control these things? Somebody triggers you, you're running off into flight or fight. You can't help it. You can't control it. Now you got to manage it. But here's the problem. The vagus nerve isn't just a muscle you can strengthen. It's a signal regulator. You can stimulate it with different kind of sound therapy. You can do singing bowls, you can do frequency, different kind of humming works really, really well. Breath work works really well. You can splash some cold water on it. You can do very specific tapping that I also teach in the MEPS program. But if your mind is flooded with stress and doubt, emotions, it'll shift you right back out again. It'll put you either into a stress state. So it's kind of like tuning a guitar. However, when you're strumming it, it's kind of like if you were to strum a guitar and you were trying to get the person across the street to hear the message to say, I got it. I'll run over and grab that. It's a message. And you want that message to be really strong and consistent. So this is when we do different things like humming and breath work, because it creates a vibration. But if you have an environmental chaotic thought or emotion, then now a new sound has come in and it's knocked the other one off of its toes. So you could say, I'm strengthening it. You are absolutely allowed to use that word. I use that word. But it's really important to understand that this is going to take time. So you've got to learn to hold that tone. And each person will have a different way of making sure they hold that tone. But you have to know what it feels like. So I go through that in the course. I'm going to try and do it a little bit here right now. So if you were to take a nice deep breath, try and let go of thoughts and emotions. There might be a little bit of physical pain. If you're in a lot of physical pain, this is actually really hard to do, because what I'm going to ask of you is to feel something in your body. Now, if you know where your sternum is, I want you to tap on your sternum. If you don't know where your sternum is, touch your throat where you would like swallow and just go underneath, and it's the bone just underneath there. And what I want you to do is tap on it so it will sound like, so I'm just making the sound on my microphone so you know it's like a tap, 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 and that's it. And then I want you to just wait. Can you feel that anywhere in your body? Now, we don't want to over tap it because the brain can then think that it's a different message. So it's a quick little tap. Why do we tap the sternum? It's because the vagus nerve comes out of the brain, it comes down through the neck, and it's going to travel through all of your organs. So it affects everything. We'll get into that later. But it does go through, and if you tap on that sternum bone, that vagus nerve goes, oh, hey, you're talking to me? What do you need? What's happening? What's going on over there? Whereas if you keep tapping on it, the muscles are going to think that you're talking to it. The nerves are going to think that you're talking to it. But a quick light tap is a way of telling the vagus nerve, hey, and it's the proper vagus nerve we want. It's the ventrovagal. So give it a quick tap. Just tap, tap, tap. And wait. You might not feel anything. That's okay. But as you go through different exercises, that's what you're going to be looking for. And you might need to do a little meditation. You may need to go through and do the breathing exercises, give it a little tap. Maybe kind of reset yourself, shake your hands out, take a deep breath and say, okay, I'll try this one more time. Tap, tap, tap. And it's like you can feel a wave maybe going down your belly. Feel this little wave. Now, because you're tapping the sternum, it's going to go below the sternum because the messages are heading down. Likely that's where you're going to feel it. You may not, but that's usually where most people feel it. The next one we're going to do is we're going to tap our clavicle. So the clavicle is your collarbone. We're going to tap the right side because the right side just seems to be more affected. The studies show it's more affected. So we're going to go tap, tap, tap. And where do you feel that? Likely it'll be like a little wave in their throat. Why? Because that's part of the nerve that it's hitting. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to tap our cheek. So your cheekbone, your jaw, somewhere up in your face, and just kind of go tap, tap, tap. I feel that in my head because that's where the nerves are. Now you've stimulated your vagus nerve, the positive one. Now, as you can imagine, any thoughts, any emotions, they'll knock it right out. It's a very subtle feeling. So depending on where you are in your life and in your journey, vagus stimulating might not work for you all that well because there's too much. The other nerves are so strong and there's so much going on. So that's okay. It's all right. You can try different humming. You can try splashing cold water on you. You can try this tapping technique. There are different things that you can try. You should absolutely try them. But what you also want to understand is you need to understand what's going on in your world and say, am I in flight or fight? Am I balanced? Or am I in shutdown? Remember that if you're balanced, you're thinking clear, you're very creative, you're problem solving, your heart is open, your digestion's good, you're feeling stable, you're in flow. Most people never get there, let alone stay there. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get you to a point where you can actually stay there for periods of time. And that's where meditation comes in. But hold on a second. What if I'm in sympathetic? I am running from that bear. If you tell me to meditate, I'm likely to slap you in the face. So when I teach meditation, I actually teach you to, just like you would any other exercise, if you're still running from that bear, I'm not going to ask you to try and sit still because that would be really cruel of me because that's going to create more anxiety because then you're going to be scared because your system still thinks it's being chased by a bear. So what do you need to do? You got to get yourself into a safe place. And the best way to do that is through movement. Get out, go for a nice walk. Get up and move your body. Because if you're moving your body, then you're telling your brain, oh, I'm safe. Even if you only move for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Because think of an animal, gets scared, boom, goes hides around the tree. I'm safe, I'm good. So it's not about timing. It's about telling your system, oh, I'm safe. Then, if you're able to get in a little bit of extra exercise, then what you add in is a little bit of faster movement because what that's going to do is it's going to burn off that cortisol. It's going to then burn off the sugars because when you're in flight or fight, your liver is like, hey, you got some organs here, you got your adrenals working. I'm not going to get into the science on it on this episode because this is really designed for the basics. But different things are happening in your body. And the one thing that's happening is your muscles are saying, okay, I'm ready to move. So your muscles are primed. And then what, you're just going to sit there at your desk? That's not going to do you any good. You need to get up and move those muscles because you've just primed them to move. So move them. And then when you move them, all of it, the sugar that was released so that you can move them will get burnt off. And that way your sugar doesn't spike. So a gentle exercise, even a light walk is really good, but contract those muscles and burn it off. If you're in shutdown and you're exhausted and you're depressed, you're emotionally numb, chronic fatigue, low energy, and you're like, I can't exercise. Not a problem. Start small. Do a little bit. Just get moving a little bit, enough to tell your body that you're safe. Now, unfortunately, when you're in the freeze shutdown, this is actually harder than if you're in sympathetic flight or fight. And the reason why it can be a lot harder is that when you're in a depression and you're trying to get out of depression, you might skip over the ventral vagal and go straight into flight or fight and end up having an anxiety attack. Because the ventral vagal is like, sorry, but I haven't been working in a while. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. So when you're in dorsal freeze, a lot of these techniques will actually work better. The strumming, the tapping, the cold water, the music therapy. They work quite well to be like, hey, ventral vagal, wake up. Hey, wake up. Dorsal vagal is like saying to, big brother, wake up, wake up, wake up. Will you wake up already? Like, wake up. And all of a sudden it wakes up and you're like, oh, hey, I feel a little bit better. But then something happens, a trigger hits you. Boom, full-blown flight or fight. Ah, crap, right? You're like, what now? So it's about balancing that teeter-totter. So then your MEPs come in. So you say, okay, hold on. I need to sort out what my triggers are. I need to sort out what's going on. I need to decrease those triggers. But then when I go in, oh, crap, I landed in dorsal vagal again. I'm exhausted today. Not a problem. Let's just stimulate the ventral vagal without going into flight or fight. And that's how the body's balancing itself. And if I've got this as a little chart in my book on Unchain Your Pain. So if you have that with you in front of you, it makes it really helpful to understand what's going on. And if you take it a step further, let's say you're more on the healing end and you're saying, hey, I want to really connect spiritually, but I'm having a hard time doing it. Well, guess what? It's hard to stay in that ventral vagal because you want to get stronger and stronger and you want to stay in it longer and longer. That's going to be a talk for another day on how do you stay in that ventral vagal if you're trying to increase your spirituality. So there you go. That's the vagus nerve 101 basics. Any more and it's just going to get too confusing. So you know now that you've got an autonomic nervous system that has two branches. One branch is the sympathetic nervous system that goes into flight or fight. That's overdrive. That's where your racing thoughts are. That's where you're freaking out and your muscles are tight and you are super desperate for control because you need to control your world. Otherwise, you're going to die. And make no mistake, no matter what your stress is, no matter how silly you may think it is, it's not silly to your brain. Your brain doesn't know the difference. If you are in boom, now we want to talk about the vagal nerve. No problem. Which vagal nerve are you talking about? Are you talking about dorsal or are you talking about ventral? Ventral is where we're calm in the middle. Dorsal is when we go way too far to the other side and we shut down. We go into safe mode. We're exhausted all the time and we need to come out of that exhaustion. So there's your 101 on the vagus nerve. So if you have listened to all three of these podcasts, you now know that I am on a quest for self-healing to help people self-heal. I've now introduced you to your maps. You can now do a self-assessment, understanding your mental, your emotional, your physical, your spiritual. Which leg is the most important for you to work on? You can now self-assess at any given point in the day and say, am I in sympathetic? Am I in my balanced vagus? Or am I in my dorsal vagus? And now what do I need to do to get out of that? And wherever you are, you got to rebuild trust with your nervous system. Is your vagus nerve ghosting you or is it helping you? You decide.